Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of No Bull with Nobu, the All-American Shaman. Nobu, how are you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me, brother.
Thank you for being here. And today we're going to get into a little bit more detail and have a deeper dive into the world of animal totems. So, could we start off? And I think the question on my mind, typically, that word totem was not in my lexicon or vocabulary prior to working with you, and I always heard it put as like a spirit animal. Is there a difference between an animal totem and a spirit animal?
I'm gonna look at Google real quick just so we can get the broader perspective. A totem is a natural object, animal, or plant that serves as a spiritual emblem or revered symbol for a specific family, clan, or group. It also refers to a physical representation like a card, figure, or painting of that symbol. So when we say like power animals, power plants, animal totems, we're saying essentially the same thing, but um in the context of, and I like to say the word totem because I see within people's energy centers when I do the scans, like the chakra scans, I can also tell within each of their chakras which of these different spirits are most prevalent. You know, for example, hawk energy within the third eye is going to have a much different effect and manifestation on the individual's personality, behavior, and consciousness than if it's in the solar plexus, right? The same way, um, the application again of any field or any tool to where it's being used can affect its effect.
So it's like you take the chakra and you say, like, at the bottom is the root, and that's more of like your grounding to the earth and your survival and kind of structural based needs. And so if you had something like hawk in your root chakra, then that would be applying. So like the hawk energy is maybe high above, it's flying, it's got good vision, it comes and swoops down and like acts really quickly. So maybe that would manifest in more how you operate in like your 3D realm of making money or something like that. And then if it was in your crown chakra, it'd be less of like that swooping energy in the or in the 3D realm, but like more in like the spiritual plane or something like that.
Precisely. And then also too, we can look at it as physical representations of the body. You know, if someone has hawk energy in their throat or their third eye, we might even see hawk-like features. And this is the study of physiognomy, Physiognomy. And it's the discredited pseudoscience of judging a person's character, moral standing, or personality traits based on their physical experience, especially facial features. So I'm immediately going to say F you, Google, right out the gate,
Right.
because I can see it in people's faces, in their bodies as well, like what
Mm.
their animal spirits are. Again, like this, we are spiritual beings having a physical experience, and as above, so below. There's a good reason why I have a mustache, my whiskers. That
Mhm.
is intentional. That is intentional resonance with, El Gato de Negro. Um, Shaving my head is very snake-like, and what do I have on the top of my skull? The king cobra. You know, um, so people can, resonate with these different energies at different levels. So like if you have, gorilla spirit more in your, root, your physicality might manifest that way. But if your heart's that way, maybe your diet is more green and vegetative. Maybe you have that motherly like compassion. Like what was that one gorilla, like Coco, who knew sign language? you know Again, there's so many different ways. eh, all of us are so unique on so many different dimensions, genetically, astrologically speaking, totem wise, chakras, karma. So the way that a human being can manifest in all these different dimensions is limitless.
Interesting. A few questions kind of jumped to my mind. I guess maybe the first would be like, why are there animal spirits within us? Like, if we're human and we're kind of like an animal ourselves to a certain extent, like, why do we have these various different animal energies in us, and then do other animals like also have other animal energies in their own systems?
What comes to mind, not so much from a shamanistic perspective, but more from a Judeo-Christian standpoint, is like when God created all the creatures and he gave dominion to humans over them, it was caretaking, to take care of them. The same way he made us in his image, this the us to lord over and have dominion and stewardship over nature was really the same. This again, another dimension of that, of like, we are created in his image, and yet again, he's still the creator and superior higher dimensional being. In the same way, again, the animals representing the anima, the more feminine materia, mother earth, earthly side of things. They are different fractals of all the ways that humans can be. Because again,
Mm.
humans can be like a snake with their words and venomous, or they could have a piercing, gaze. Um, and it's even in our language, right? Someone will say like, "Oh, that guy's a snake in the grass," or like, that guy, that's a cool cat, or like, "What's up, dog?" Like, again, like, we are nature, and nature is us, and so as above, so below, and as within, without. And
Mm.
as far as
Okay, that makes
animals
sense.
go, as far as like, do they have different totems or other things? Animals have chakras. I know that. Like, every animal has like their own different chakra sequence. Um, but I can't speak on. I've never looked at a cat and been like, oh, like, you have like gorilla energy or you chimpanzee energy. I'll have to do some more research and inquiry into that.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes my dog, who is German Shepherd and like Black Lab mix, he kind of acts cat like he'll kind of pounce and then like kind of act playful and then kind of ignore you and be quiet, much like a cat would typically. So I don't know if that's an an example of maybe some other animal energy within within a dog or something.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
they all learn
Good.
from each other, but go ahead, brother.
That's true. So based on what you're saying of seeing how these animal spirits express themselves and where they're located in the various different chakras and how that may impact our behavior or personality, it seems it'd be advantageous to understand your own spirits in all the different various chakras. How would you go about determining that if you're someone new to this exploration?
One, and I think we hit on this in the previous episode, but first off, I would urge the person to look at what do they fear the most and what do they love or wish to be embody the most. And if they're really severely lacking self-awareness, which some people are, that's fine. I would urge them to look at, what tattoos do you have? What brand clothing do you wear? Do you wear Puma shoes? You know, do you drive a Jaguar? Do you drive a Tiguan? Uh, again, it's all within, like, a Tesla vehicle looks like a Panther. You look at its curves, its aesthetic, right? It has that very shape and aesthetic to it. We can see these things within everything expressing itself. Are you wearing gecko clothing? What other brands are there that are just, like Burt's Bees? I mean, like, these different,
Mm.
we're always reflecting back at it. And then seeing too, like, what their diets, like what foods they're eating, because these are also, good ways. And again, you also do become what you eat as well. So if you eat cattle and if you eat swine, well, you will become as such. That's one thing to be aware of as well. But um, a more advanced way of discerning is, again, meditation. Meditation or entering into a trance state via drumming, singing, chanting, psychedelics. But with meditation, one must first reach a certain level of stillness and silence to where they can determine what is them and what is not them. Right? Some people get really, not to go off on a tangent here, but like, they can't discern much through meditation in terms of the occult or metaphysical or astral, because they're still so caught up in all the other noise around them that's not even them, and they're self-identifying with it. And that's why a lot of people, again, manifest anxiety, depression, whatnot, because they're hearing and sensing other energies and spirits that aren't them, and they
Mm.
believe them to be those thoughts to be them. Which,
Mm.
again, like with cannabis, we discussed before, it highly opens up your aura. So a lot of times why people develop anxiety in public spaces with weed is because really they're just becoming more psychic, and they aren't conscious enough to discern that's their thought, not my thought. Again, your brain is just receiving information. It's a receiver. It's not the generator of thought. You're receiving that from a higher plane, you know. So when you open yourself up and you start hearing other chatter, people freak out. Same with meditation. So this is why, again, going out in nature, being in a calm, quiet space, just to go within and feel into those different energy centers and just learn to trust your intuition. It's not so much this cognitive thing. It's more of this just feeling, you know, like ask yourself, and you know this from experience with coaching. A lot of times I'll ask people, you know, I'll preface before I ask the question, without thinking about this, you know, just right off the hip, what is the first thing that comes to mind when I say this? And
Hmm.
usually, again, like the subconscious will know, you know, people just intuitively know, but a lot of people second guess themselves and therefore shoot themselves in the foot and get themselves in the wrong answer.
Right. Yeah. So it seems like with discovering your animal totem, it's almost like allow the subconscious to do the self assessment and maybe notice things. Like if if in the moment you don't really notice what's going on, maybe that's another reason why journaling is a powerful tool. Is like, okay, recount your day, what happened, what did you eat, like what did you see, did you go for a walk and you saw like a hawk, or you saw a deer or a mouse or ants or something like that, like came into your physical space and your mental awareness. And then if they start recurring more and more often, perhaps this reoccurring theme or reoccurring animal that's showing up in your world is more of a reflection of your inner state than you may know.
Yes. And I want to dial in on that too, is because a lot of people have this very three-dimensional, physical matrix mindset of where like, well, like, oh, I see, they're like, I see, like, I've seen more snakes this summer of being home in Pennsylvania than I have any other time in my life. You know, I was born and raised in Pennsylvania, and while I was in the mountains recently, and then just even back home, I've seen so many snakes, and that's that's not a coincidence. That's not like they were always there, but again, it's revealing itself to me. It's showing me in my experience because it's energy I need to integrate, and it has a lesson to teach me. You know, and that's the thing is that you said journal, pay attention to what you see because I promise you, everybody, that everything again is happening for you. And some people say, like, well, isn't that really egotistical, Nobu? Like, no, like, it's really beautiful that the creator has every single person's individual experience and story, like, honed in and dialed in simultaneously in conjunction as one big, beautiful portrait of life. Like, it's beautiful. It's beautiful when you think about it. It's not egotistical. Like, you're all special and unique, and you all like need to pay attention to what's transpiring in front of you because, like you said, it's a reflection of you. You know, the lesson will continue till the teaching has been learned. On the note of snakes, my aunt, she's terrified of snakes, and I ended up bringing a snake skin into the house, and she started freaking out. It was a rattlesnake skin that I found, and again, what do people fear? What they don't understand, right? So that's another thing too. Why I say about the ones that you fear the most, because that's where the medicine is. That's where the healing. During my second ayahuasca series of ceremonies, during the second night, every time I closed my eyes in the medicine, I kept seeing this big black cat with like a diamond grill and like blazing blue eyes staring back at me. And I was terrified. Well, what was it, Nobu? It was me, like having to face, my own intensity, my own, ferocity, and to come to terms with that. So when people are scared of different animals, they're really just scared of themselves. Again, back to
Mm,
soul retrieval and back to being whole and back to being holy, looking at all of God's creations, all the animals, who is who in the zoo, we're all, made as some level of representation, again, of the anima, the subconscious, the more primal aspects that make up us. Again, we do have higher levels of intelligence. We do have, things that the more baser creatures do not, but they are all just as we all represent the different parts of God, right? All the different animals and plants and rocks and stones and everything else are also representing aspects of us.
mm. It's almost like you're kind of doing shadow work through those animal totems that you're finding fear with.
Correct.
Interesting. So, are there ways to, um, I suppose, when someone's born, they kind of have innate spirit animals in their chakras, and then are there ways to kind of work with that or morph them over time with like intention or direction applied to it?
Yes. You remember when Jetson was born, right? Well, I immediately.
Hawk.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and you can myself. I can just again. It's very intuitive. Claircognizance is one of my clair skills I have. But you can look at a baby, or look at a child. And again, the indigenous people knew this. A lot of times they gave their, you know, you know, how many tribe leaders from various groups across the world have different animal names, right?
Right.
You said like, what was his name? The wind is my mother, the bear is my
But yeah,
father.
Bearheart.
Bearheart, when they would grow out of perhaps initial. So maybe you were, gift horse as a child, but when you became a man, and you completed your rite of passage, maybe you then become, mountain tiger. There's evolution.
Mm,
Again, for myself, it wasn't until 2 years ago that I even really started to truly integrate the black cat, like both at a subconscious and conscious level. Um, for Whereas for the time in the military, being in that pack, right, it was more necessary for me to, and I actually have more canine tattoos than I do anything else.
mm,
Uh, I've wolf here, my dog Zoe's paw here, two wolves here, you know, um, but it's just like Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh or these other things like which are again are imitating nature and what's reality because art is life. There's an evolution of things. You may not end with the same group you're starting with, but I can see that I had cat the entire time, but whether it was fully present, right, and integrated, it was not. Just as a snake, I know was not integrated. Wolf was not integrated till I got out of juvie, because before that, dogs would just see me and they'd smell the on me and bite me in the butt.
right.
So going from being submissive to more dominant caused a shift within that species.
Mm, hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess along like with that evolutionary path, like if you are more cognizant of kind of like how they're being expressed and just like the direction that you want to take it, you can kind of lean into one versus the other, or like you're mentioning your circumstances, like if it's more beneficial for you to be in that pack mentality, then you don't necessarily have to adhere to say the underlying cat or like solo energy in it. You can kind of shift your direction, your energy into more toward like a pack if it's beneficial for your situation.
Yes, sir. Yeah, yeah. And that's why again, like in my experience, I see most people of having like between 1 to 4 primary totems that like those are the ones that they most embody and resonate. And I would say 90% of the time I'm spot on with those of where I can just like those are it. Like, again, you might have other ones in your chakras, but like these are the ones that you need to, and if we just had to boil you down to these 4 ones, like it would be those. And but yeah, you can call them different again, like. And then also too within, let's say cats, like different cats have different ways of operating. Like you know, I resonate most with the ambush solar hunter, whereas you resonate more with the fast, speed, very gentle and kind with humans, the cheetah, right? They're both
Hmm.
felines and felidae, but they have completely different methods of hunting, of operating, right? So that's another thing too, is that's why I also encourage people to watch a lot of like when they are trying to integrate their totems to watch animal documentaries
Mm,
because it's such an easy way of educating yourself about yourself. And you can
yeah.
see how this very thing that maybe you found bats repulsive, but then you learn about them and you see all the amazing genetic anomalies that are present with them. And you're like, wow, like this is incredible. Like, and you can then connect dots on how you can use this medicine in your own life. From so many different dimensions, and there's so many books written on this, like Animal Speak by Ted Andrews. I got 2 other books recently on different animal totems. I can't remember their names, but just watching and reading a Wikipedia page and watching YouTube Nat Geo documentaries can teach you a lot about who is who in the zoo.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was you had recommended Animal Speak by Ted Andrews, and it was eye opening in the fact that like even the most seemingly insignificant encounter you may have with an animal of any shape or size can give you a lot of insights and like lessons and approaches to life. Like I think we mentioned on the first episode we talked about animal totems. Like I was seeing a lot of ants, and I was like, oh, like these ants, like what could they possibly be trying to teach me? It's like, oh, like diligence and working together as a collective, you know, building a colony, like just not stopping until the job is done, like climbing over any obstacle, finding any sort of little tiny crack that they can get themselves into to get their goal. Like there's actually a ton of wisdom in the way that an ant operates that yeah, without that perspective, and like that book kind of put it in very plain terms, I would have just ignored it and never really thought twice about seeing an ant in my consciousness. So definitely highly recommend that book. And as you're, you know, out in your day to day life, just like seeing these animals and ones that pop up more often than not, you can like kind of go to the back, see which pages have that animal described in it, and go see what wisdom they may have to share with you. Um, so back to that word totem pole is a kind of my mind jumps right to that, and usually there's these animals stacked up. So is that, like I think we talked about in the previous episode too, like the chakras, and like as the animals go up the chain, like those types of spirits are described in that way on that art form.
That's how I see it. And that's how I also very acutely perceive it as well within people's chakras. I don't know if the indigenous who made totem poles were doing that in that context. I can't speak on that. But as far as my own practice and work, yes. Like I completely, that's how I see it. You know, of where, and again, it may not be just like 7, it might be 20, you know, right? Or again, it might be a puzzle and staggering. You know, someone might have more cheetah energy in their legs, but then more of this jaguar energy in their arms.
Hmm.
Which actually brings me to another point about, you know, the wearing of different parts, because I have on my necklace 3 different feline parts, and all 3 of them offer a very, very unique hunting strategies, and then furthermore, different medicines based upon what the body part is. So for context, the one on my necklace here is a jaguar fang from a melanistic jaguar that was named Silver Feathers. And as soon as I got this one, this was my first one I got on this necklace, I immediately had enhanced stealth and psychic awareness of what was going on around me, and also being able to see in the dark much better. It was very palpable in the first week. And I think I remember messaging you too. Like I was also dealing with more aggression. I had to learn to like channel that, because again, Jaguar Pantera onca, you know, is known as like, you know, he who kills in one leap, or true beast,
Hmm.
right? So having a lot of power in that way also requires a lot of restraint. You
Hmm.
know, again, I find no coincidence that, you know, the jaguar in South America is also, you know, trip off the aya vine, the cappy vines, you know, chewing that and have their own experiences with that medicine, and seeing as how they're also representative of that. So the spirit of ayahuasca is strongly interlaced within that as well, that more feminine shadow energy. Versus recently, when I got the leopard claw, I was walking. This is the most profound shift, and I was laughing to myself as it happened. It was I was going out for a walk to the woods, and when I was coming back, I knew it was about to rain, and so I had my poncho here with me, and just like without even really thinking about it. And again, the longest journey most people take is 13 inches long. It's from here to here.
Hmm.
But like without even really thinking about it, I took my poncho and I was walking like this. Like, I was walking in, like, and it wasn't raining yet, but I was walking like that. And then it hit me. 2 things hit me. One, I was like, oh yeah, leopards have such strong necks that they can carry a gazelle while climbing a tree and bring it up there. Which is
Hmm.
again, it's something like is exclusive to like the leopards. Like jaguars don't carry their prey up to trees to eat it.
Mm.
This is a novel shift. And then furthermore, the second thing that occurred through my mind was it was about ready to lightning. I was like, oh, well, if I get electrocuted, now I'm biting down something so I won't bite my tongue off.
Yeah, and for those just listening, Nobu was carrying his raincoat in his teeth, in his mouth. Yeah, for those that not watching on the visual. Um, yeah, so it's almost like the morphic field of that piece of the animal itself is then like when you're wearing like a claw or a tooth, then that energy is then present in your auric space, and thus you're able to kind of incorporate that into yours and like pull some of the traits and like leverage some of the traits that that animal has for your own uses.
100%. Yeah. And that comes back to, again, everything is a morphic field. Everything is happening through formative causation, is happening through a series of patterns. Genetics would say it's like, well, because this gene is dominant or this one is more prevalent. But again, what is most prevalent is a series of adaptations between what works. And again, like fields that don't work, or crystalline structures, of onyx, aren't going to last if they're weaker. Whereas again, we can see also when they create novel crystals that the longer they're being around, the more stable and the faster they form. That's really cool. Because again, once the fields grow with time, and this is also too why sometimes people say like, like Nobu, can you make this field again, make a new version? I'm like, there's already one been made out, a year ago. It's already more powerful than it was when I made it. They grow with time
Mm.
as they get more, because again, when I said before, like the user interacts with the field and the field interacts with the user. You know, it's an exchange there of, information and also application. But anyways, yeah, as far as the animals, or plants, again, like leather, even just wearing leather versus wool versus hemp versus cotton versus polyester, you know, tobacco versus Zyn, vaping versus smoking tobacco. These, I encourage people to be as spiritual, as possible in finding to make all the mundane things in your life sacred. To the untrained eye, it might look like my room is just some discombobulation of various objects, but I assure you, everyone, there is a method to why certain things are the way they are. Which we can get more into that as well on like the spiritual warfare episode. But again, like for example, like the bear, back there has my one leather hat that's covered in onyx on it. So I've worn that onyx, I've worn that hat that has my hair, oil, scent, DNA, my morphic field, my aura, my energy attached to it. So now acting as a portal to me, like I get a tangible link to that bear medicine, right?
Hmm.
Or if I carry again a rattlesnake skin in my fanny pack, if I have cobra third eyes in my fanny pack, or if I have elephant semen on the back of my necklace, like which I do, like all these things like contribute to my own energy. And again, we really get into the nitty gritty of it, like, and I know you've been learning a lot about this through firsthand experience and assistance from you. Thank you in the past, like couple weeks, but like each body part, like a fang has a much different application than a claw, than a tail, than ears. So, when I encourage people that when you're looking into these things in terms of like, if you want to resonate more and honor your totems, to really get into the details, have attention to detail. Let's say someone really has bat as one of their primary totems. They want to resonate with energy. It's okay. Well, do you want to have that perception of sound? Then I recommend you find a skull or like the ears, to resonate with that. But is it the sense of flight, or is it the ability to, absorb life force? If it's a vampire bat, absorb life force through the mouth and the fangs. With jaguar, I was very intentional with wanting a fang because jaguars, are unique in how they kill their prey. They pierce the back of the skull, including turtles and caiman, uh, or the top of the cervical spine, versus Homotherium or Sabertooth, had more of a slashing motion with their fangs.
Mm.
And then versus, hyenas, which crush bones, with their with their teeth. So again, like I said, Wikipedia and Nat Geo can really pay attention and then think about how you want to and what feels right for you. Don't come to me. I mean, I can guide you, but no one knows you better than you.
Right. Right. And so just like working with the morphic field of kind of having like various different body parts or whatnot that you can have in your physical space. You're also mentioning on diet as well. So it's like the type of food or plants or animals that you're consuming, you'll kind of absorb that morphic energy as well. And I know you mentioned kind of like looking at the diet of the animal. So like, you know, a wolf will eat like a deer or like something like that. And so if you're eating deer, like, are you going to be more like the wolf energy or more like the deer energy or kind of both? Do you see like a
Both,
distinction there? Yeah.
both. Again, like the jaguar loves the monkey. It kills and hunts the monkey, but it loves it, right? Because you are what you eat. Again, just like that parallel of yin and yang. You know, the monkey is in the upper realms of consciousness, living on fruit, being much more, you know, clean and much less dense karmic experience, and also much less dense in its physicality. Whereas the jaguar is low to the ground and very primal and very aggressive, but it also has, you know, that darker existence and energy to it. And then the deer, you know, if you're eating deer, a side note, if you do have a totem, do not eat that totem. So if you have wolf as a totem, do not consume wolf. That is cannibalism.
Mm,
And that will incur some negative consequences. I actually just had a coaching client recently who wasn't cognizant of these things at all, but she intuitively knew that she messed up. She was out to dinner and she had a rabbit, and later, you know, she was talking to me and messaging me and then on a call, and she's like, yeah, I felt like really bad about it. Like, I don't know like what's going on. Like, why is this like, and I was like, because what animal do you see the most on a daily basis? Rabbit. Okay. How does this relate to all, and I started to list out all of her other behaviors that are rabbit like. And then she's like, oh
mm.
God. I was like, it's okay. This is a learning experience. Like,
Yeah.
there's this happened for a reason. We'll purge through this and we'll go through, you know, there's always forgiveness, but
Mm.
you know, don't eat, you know, your exact kin in that totem pole energy.
Interesting. Yeah, another good reason to discover discover what your primary totems are. And maybe that's another way of finding it out too, is like hold something in your hand and be like, do I want to eat this? Or like think about it or be like, hey, does this sound appealing or disgusting to me? If you're repulsed by the thought of eating it, perhaps that is because it's very prevalent within you.
Yeah. Yeah, I see a lot of people who, and this is again where it's always a choice, you know, some people think I'm a savage and very warlike and aggressive in my current state as someone who eats almost exclusively fruit. Uh, and I assure you that if I started eating flesh again, and I've told you and other people again, like when I was a big flesh eater,
Yeah.
I make me look like a freaking kitty cat because the aggression again that comes back to again you're consuming the suffering of these animals. You know, you're consuming their karma, you're consuming their fear. You know, all these things. So people might think like, oh, like I want to be like the jaguar, I want to be like a lion, and it's like, do you have what it takes to be king? You know, like you want to be like a lion, but like, are you willing to get covered in scars and fight over like you want a harem of women, but like, are you willing to deal with all the drama that comes with a bunch of females in heat at the same time who want to
Mm.
mate several times a day? Uh, I'm not into polygamy, but just one woman who is horny can be a little bit too much for me and my patients. So again, be careful what you wish for, and just be aware of what comes with the territory of that spirit. You know,
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. And actually kind of makes me think before you were kind of mentioning on like the scales of consciousness and the monkeys and the trees and like the predators and then like the etymology of that word like predate, that was kind of on my mind earlier today when we were talking about this episode. And so the idea behind that is like these are more historically like base level ways of surviving was by killing and consuming something else, and perhaps the more evolved approach is finding things like fruit that are basically abundant out there being produced by other plants and that don't incur any karmic debt from consuming them. Could you maybe just like kind of touch on that framework or philosophy there?
So it's very interesting too about this is because in South America, with their dietas they do, for shamans and training, they actually again jaguars the most powerful in South America. Like that is like jaguars like one of the top kings of the jungle per se. And but what when someone's seeking to become a shaman or find out their totems or resonate with different plants, whether it be ayahuasca, tobacco, combo, what have you, uh, zoology, not plant medicine in a sense. They actually go on very restrictive diets of usually of just like plantains. You know, if they do have any protein, it might just be like school consciousness fish, so like sardines, ones that
Mm,
don't have. And I actually talked to a lady years ago, Bhakti Yoga Bliss in California, about this because she was pescatarian, and she was pescatarian to the point of where she only consumed fish that were in schools that weren't individual units. And it makes sense to me now where that concept comes from, because you see like a school of birds, like sparrows that fly in complete harmony, right? Or you
mm,
see a school of fish that swim complete cohesive unit. They have essentially, again, the subconscious field that's connecting them all to move in harmony and synchrony. You take off one sardine out of the school, it is almost like the equivalent of taking like the weakest apple off the tree, right? Um, I'm not excusing anyone's behavior or choice. Again, it's still karma. You're still taking a life of being. You're still like there's still karma and debt without that. Uh, just speaking the truth here. But again, in terms of like eating sardines or a sparrow, a school field animal versus a cow is much different, right?
mm-hmm,
Again, that cow will have kin and raise it and have it. We've seen that cows, horses, elephants, they grieve, their kin and their families. And there's again the scales of consciousness to this. So, um, but as far as, resonating with that, you can eat like what you wish to embody. But again, like you said, there's always a choice. All of my primary totems are all ambush predators, and I do not consume flesh.
mm.
Again, there's always a choice.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that also just like we said, convenience is a trap in modern society, and also just what is promoted and advertised and available, and just like culturally viewed as this is what food is here in America. Like the meat um, industry and culture is incredibly strong. So I think it'd be easier for folks to create diets and structures around what they're eating if the culture around consuming primarily fruit or vegetables or fish or whatnot was in place. So I think it's just like the um, like you're saying, the self-reflection and self-analysis. I mean, like, okay, why am I really eating this? Is it my own choice and my own belief that I think this is the best thing for me, or is it just kind of like that's what the rest of society is doing and I'm just kind of going along with it? Because I mean, I'm openly admitting like I do eat meat. I logically and morally, and like you said, the karma argument is very compelling to me. However, I'm like just very still in that conditioned frame of mind where I'm eating meat and haven't really, I guess, seen the path of me getting off of that off ramp into the more of like that kind of vegetarian or vegan type of approach. But the pescatarian one feels like the easiest transition point to go on because you are still getting um, the protein in the meat sense of it, but not going pure watermelon like Nobu quite yet. So maybe you could tell us
Spirit.
a quick little juice feast update in the middle of the episode here. How's been back on the watermelon juice train for you?
I had 2 weeks. I had a week where I was up in the mountains and I was working outside a lot, so I wasn't juicing. I was eating solid foods, so mainly pineapple, watermelon, pears, plums, dates. I actually lost. I didn't weigh myself at the end, but my fanny pack. I don't know if you can see it. There's quite a
A
lot
lot
of
of room.
space. There's a
Yeah.
lot of space there. I need to tighten it up. It was tight before. I lost like 7 pounds in the first couple of days because of how like intense my activity level was. But and then the past week I was off the wagon. But again, the contrast, every time. Again, I'm never speaking from a place of judgment because I have made all the mistakes. I have touched all the hot stoves, well, almost all of them, a lot of them, and I'm just telling you, like every time I come back to the juice, it's like, oh my God, like again, like Dr. Robert Moore says, like fruit is the back door to spirituality.
Mm,
Like just increasing again when you eat life and you consume life, and again you remove the physical obstructions in the body, again, both in terms of the fecal matter and then also every interstitial, every cell of your body, and you clean out that waste, magical things happen. And I can just like again like I talked about before, like senior tension. Like there's times in my life where like when I relapse where bad luck followed, and it's like, well, no shit. Like I literally just it takes 40 drops of blood to make one drop of semen. And it's like the ability to create life, like your own seed, which again, why are 92% of watermelons seedless? Conspiracy theory.
mm,
But again, that there's so much power in that creative life force. And again, just saying with again, live, living fruits, high in biophotons, high in water, hydrating every cell of your body. There's just so many benefits. But yeah, like I feel great. And yesterday I told you like I only had 74 ounces. Um, I suspect the reason why I'm able now to survive off much less and they thrive, because I am jacked right now, is because of some new fields I've recently created and had also made for me. Thank you. Um, and to where, because again, we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. I would argue that the reason why most people aren't able to ever go or think they can't ever go frugivore or potentially pranic or again doing with less or fasting is again because most people have parasites again
mm,
and they don't realize how heavily influenced they are by these things, to where again that craving you're having for chicken breast isn't you. God made fruit for you. Another thing I just want to highlight here, because people will say like the Bible says like no, like the Bible says the fruit will be thy meat. The every herb, tree, and plant bearing seed will be your meat. Not as in meat, as in flesh of animals, but like Yahweh was referring to living a karmic free existence.
mm,
But again, everything gets twisted and corrupted. Because again, what happens when you copy a file again and again and again, or what happens if you tell someone a rumor and then by the time it gets around the circle, it's completely jacked up. And the same thing's true for the scripture. But anyways, um, going back to the parasites and the demons, when people aren't clear spiritually in that way, or clear physically, they can't, or because there's too many viruses and malware that are sucking up usage, energy, whether it be your Jane Qi Shen, your actual like mitochondria, you're not efficient. So then when we start to throw this higher octane fuel in, it's it's hard. It's hard.
mm.
You've been adapted, and you're not you, but things in your body are crying out for this garbage. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like you said, the game of telephone happened, but also things get hijacked and then weaponized. And so you convince people that eating low vibration dead flesh is good. And thus you keep people basically in a constant state of needing to purge and in a constant state of being full of toxins and just sick and weak. So, just again, taking the step back, seeing myself as as someone that can has room for improvement, so to speak, in this way, shape, or form. But definitely been bringing more self consciousness and awareness to my choices around food and feeling the impacts. And the watermelon juice feast. I did a 3-day one the other week, and I will say it was pretty crazy. And maybe that's a topic for another episode on some of that Moldavite energy that it created. But maybe circle it circle it back to the totem and animal theme here. Any other kind of directions or kind of topics we wanted to cover in this one?
Yeah, actually, no directions. Every different culture, and also why I said four. Every person in my experience usually has between like 1 to 4 primary totems. Like those are like with you, they are like if we had to sum up you, just like if I had to sum up my name in 4 letters, it would be either be NOBU, NATE, or NXBV. Right? Or again, like you have your initials, NRK, JTG, these going down to the core essence of things and seeing what's there. Your 4 animal totems are your north, your south, your east, and your west. And all these different directions have a different energy. We can go into the directions at a later day, but again, I would really, every person that I've worked with in helping them understand themselves from that shamanistic animal totem perspective has gotten so much greater clarity on how to operate in their day-to-day life. Because again, every day you're seeing it. You're seeing it out in life. Like you can be in a city and you'll still see these different spirits, like in their different forms.
Yeah. So you said like the directions, and actually this kind of thing came up in the Ted Andrews book of like if you see birds flying from a certain direction, that it may actually have, or like an animal approaching you from a certain direction, that may have some significance as well. Have you kind of dove into that aspect also?
I have not dove into that aspect, which is what I said, like future episode, no worries. But like, for example, my drum, the north is like the north side of the drum is primarily jaguar energy. The west side of the drum is primarily snake cobra energy. The south side of the drum is primarily spider. And then the east side of the drum is primarily owl energy. Like, and I can, just as I told you before, like the symbiote of, Nobu, how I can tell in different parts of the field, the song, like which energies are present and coming out most strongly. The same way with my drum, I can tell as I move about the drum which energies are present within every, like I could draw like a map, like if I drew on it, of like what energy is present here. And again, just as that applies to my drum, that applies to every single person in their entire physical makeup.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. It's a whole wild world of animal energies to explore out there. So definitely encourage you all to post in the comments what you think your primary totems are, and curious to hear how they manifest in your world. Any final comments, Nobu, you want to leave the audience with?
It's always important to know who is who in the zoo.
Isn't that true? Thank you very much, Nobu. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time.